justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security. Oh, what a joy. Oh, what a peace. How great this country could be. Respecting your rights. Respecting human rights. What a wonderful nation.
Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of Let's Start Justice with Jamaicans for Justice. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director for JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, the Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
Now, we're coming up on the last week in September of 2023. That means that we have just 3 more months left in the year, and we do look forward to a restful Christmas period. So I'm a couple months ahead because the rest is so needed. And I think as a country, we had a rough last week, so we need a little bit of a reboot, eh? Yeah. All right. Couple things that we're going to be discussing today outside of the main topic for the program. We're going to be having a conversation towards the second half of the program around the matters arising with the Integrity Commission, and I'm sure the country would have tuned in around those developments, as well as the job description for members of parliament and what exactly we're going to be expecting and how citizens' accountability is critical in that conversation. But that's towards the end of the program. When we look at last week, let me start with a lighter note, if you will. JFJ with Jade as our policy specialist, Vanessa as our program officer, we ventured on a partnership, if you will, a training partnership with some youth parliamentarians, upcoming political leaders, some of whom you would be expecting in the next general election. And they spanned the youth arms across all the political parties, G2K, PNPYO, the Patriots, NDM, and UIC, just to get a sense of where we stood on the legislative gaps around gender-based violence and their role in advancing some of those issues. Jade, I'm not sure if you have anything to add to the training. For me, I thought it was an inspiring engagement, if you will.
Well, I will agree with your terminology. I think we were able to open some eyes and also learn a few things as well through the exchange. I think it helped to open up dialogue on some important issues that are necessary to address our gender-based violence issues in Jamaica. So I'm glad that we have some of our future leaders understanding those issues and possibly being able to advance improvements in some of those areas in the future.
Yeah, great. So, again, very good exchange, and we're going to be mapping some future partnerships with these young leaders. And I personally look forward to the dialogue on the National Human Rights Institution, which came up, for example, how we can play a part in reviewing the Domestic Violence Act. And you would have heard on the program before some of the gaps, the Sexual Offences Act, when you talk about the definition of rape and the gaps where those provisions are concerned, where we are with marital rape. So a number of things were touched, but again, we look forward to upcoming conversations with the youth leaders. And since the training, a few have reached out to us saying that they're excited, they're happy for JFJ to engage them in this dialogue. So again, we look forward to it. On a more somber note, the news cycle last week was a difficult one in different ways. I think it was Saturday or Sunday morning. I opened, I don't have the physical paper, but I opened the links to some articles, and there were 2 stories that jumped out. 8-year-old raped and murdered. 8-year-old murdered. At first, I thought it was the same 8-year-old that was the subject of the article, only to realize that it's 2 different incidents that made the paper. and I don't want us to forget their names. We have 8-year-old Talia Thomas from Discovery Bay, St. Anne, who was brutally raped and murdered by her neighbor. And her colleagues at Discovery Bay Primary are in a state of shock and now undergoing grief counseling. When we look at Venice Burke, another 8-year-old in Portland, who was found with a bag over her head, lying in urine. The circumstances are still unknown, but it is traumatic just the same. And then we recall 8-year-old Danielle Rowe, who was found with her throat slashed a couple months ago. Then we remember another 8-year-old, Nikita Noel, who was raped by her stepfather, if you will, her mother's partner, who has since been convicted and sentenced. And you look at all of these incidents and you wonder as a nation what we can do differently to prevent and arrest what can arguably be deemed as an epidemic against our children. So it's a more somber note, but it is one that we can't shy away from as a society. And I've seen several interviews with Diane Gordon Harrison, our children's advocate, who have been championing and talking about the issue. And one of the things we have said here on JFJ as well, and certainly when you look at the reports from the Jamaica Constabulary Force, more often than not, these types of violent crimes and incidents of rape against our children, it is committed by someone who is known to them. So what can we do to help families to look at the signs? We heard from Dr. Warren Thompson from the Child Protection Family Services Agency on this program here, guiding us through some of these conversations. And I think it is something that is worth continuing in dialogue so we can empower our children to report, understand the good and bad touch, empowering our parents to look at the signs, empowering the communities not to be silent, and dial 211 if we suspect any child abuse. So again, a somber note to start on, but I think it is something that's critical as we review our human rights issues of last week. Over to you, Jade.
Thank you for that, Mikhail. It's I'm finding it even difficult to move on to my segment. But okay, we go on to our Did You Know for today. And in light of our substantive topic, or Did You Know for today, and in light of our substantive topic, we are focused on Jamaica's refugee policy. And at Article 2 of that policy, it states that where it is that a person has a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of his or her race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, opinion, outside of the country of his or her nationality, and is unable or unwilling, due to such fear, to return to their country, they shall be able to seek asylum, refugee status, asylum, under that policy. So that is our national policy on refugees. And we go now to our Did You Know, which asks when that policy came into, when that policy was finalized, not when it came into force, when it was finalized. So if you want to respond to that, you can respond via WhatsApp at 2397583 or via our Instagram page. It should be posted by now. So you'll be able to respond to that.
Yeah, I'm sorry for putting you in a mood. I can hear it in your voice, but let's shake it off. It was heavy. It was heavy. But, we push ahead. It's another serious issue that we're discussing. Asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants. We've heard these terminologies before, but let's look at the human rights implications and the state's responsibility if someone is to seek asylum or refugee status in our country. Now, for those who have been keeping up with the news, we recognize that in 2021, the president was assassinated in Haiti. And since then, you would have seen where the country has experienced political instability and civil unrest. Gangs have arguably taken over the country. Just since we saw a media report from the Foreign Affairs Minister, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, indicating that Haiti needs much help. But as Jamaica is talking about Haiti needs much help, the Haitians have been seeking assistance from Jamaica. And on July 10, 2023, we saw where 37 Haitian nationals landed in Portland after a reported 2-week travel. The group included 24 males and 5 females, as well as 8 children. And following their landing on July 18th, 29 members of the group were convicted of illegal entry to Jamaica. And it was reported that as the persons had not applied for asylum, which was the natural course of action, there were some problems there with their ability to remain in Jamaica.
Yes. So there was an intervention by human rights group Freedom Imaginaries and their legal partners in order to assist these persons in filing their asylum applications and to delay the deportation that would have been ordered upon their conviction of illegal entry. Now, this application was made in light of the situation Mikel described at the beginning of the program there of civil unrest, political unrest within Haiti that may be driving citizens to seek asylum. Now, there have been some further considerations since this process has begun, and Freedom Imaginaries would have raised challenges with access to information for the applicants as well as access to the asylum process for the children, which this is still an ongoing process.
Now, civil society groups, including Advocates Network, Stand Up for Jamaica, they warned of a likely increased number of asylum seekers as a result of the civil unrest. And then we saw that on September 10th, 2023, another 36 Haitians landed in Portland. Unfortunately, within 24 hours, they were returned. And I have to put that in. I know Jay didn't have it in the script. In the dead of the night, they were returned to Haiti on the government's instruction. This action has since garnered further criticism on whether due process was followed, as the persons were given no opportunity to file asylum applications.
So to discuss this issue today, we have several persons with us. We are joined by Ms. Carla Gulota from Stand Up Jamaica, Mr. Hugh Small, and Mr. Marcus Goff, who would have been working alongside Freedom Imaginaries since these persons arrived. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Let us start with Mr. Goff, because you have been the attorney, Marcus, on this matter. So if you could just paint a picture of what the underlying context is for the listeners.
Sure. Well, I'm one of the attorneys, also with Melanie and Hugh, who is online. But yes, I mean, what we have seen, is that the stated words and statements by the government don't seem to always be taken into account in practice. Because while we talk about helping Haiti, the response we see here has not been what we think would have been ideal. So in terms of how they've been processing the applicants, the concerns raised concern issues such as translation and the accuracy and the fulsomeness of what the Haitians are saying, in their own cases, and also, of course, disclosure. We've been told that there's a lot of information that has been garnered about the applicants through and by the government of Jamaica. which they intend we here to use against them, but we have not, as their lawyers, hadn't had any access to that material as yet. And so we are concerned that this process does seem to be one that is likely to end up, where we first feared it would, with some deportation. And having now seen what's been happening to the second group that has come, then, we're very concerned that the proper protections and due processes have not been followed.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcus. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to ask you all to stay with us as we continue to set the context. So we'll be right back.
At Guardian General, we believe you can keep driving on the road without driving up your insurance premium, simply because our third-party policies are made to fit your pocket perfectly and give you peace of mind. Plus, you get extra benefits, such as windscreen coverage and further discounts when you pay your premium in full. Pay online or at any Guardian General office island-wide. What are you waiting for? Call us at 888-468-3474 for a free quote today. Live safe. Live easy.
Yo, dancehall can't start when the money must shut the content.
Right.
Introducing the Bridge 99 FM Dance Hall Chart Show.
I are the one and they are what?
All about our weekly top 10 music countdown. Our Bridge Spotlight featuring artists and music producers, and our chat with the Bridge Jocks and music director.
We bring you in on the action. Just send your videos every week for your favorite artists on the chart in our Fan Affair segment. Do it WhatsApp 876-551-5782.
Jogger!
It's new, it's authentic, it's trend setting, and only on the Bridge 99 FM Dance Hall Chart Show, hosted by Shell.
You know the vibes this Friday at 1 p.m. at the wickedest thing since dancehall. You know the thing go, we're bringing the vibes to the where, to the what, to the world.
Jamaica. Are you ready for the ultimate getaway? Look no further than Iberostar Rose Hall Beach, nestled in the breathtaking second city of Montego Bay, an all-inclusive paradise where families, friends, and groups can create unforgettable memories. Book your stay today and experience the perfect getaway. Visit our website at iberostar.com. Your passport to paradise. Terms and conditions apply, subject to availability.
I'm a maestro and I represent for which FM? Bridge FM, really rich FM.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans, by justice. The people's champion. Justice for all.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We are joined by Miss Carla Galato, Mr. Hugh Small, and Mr. Marcus Goff, and we're discussing several issues, including asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants, and examining those human rights implications and state responsibility. Before we took the break, Mr. Goff was setting some of the context of the issues that have been affecting those persons who landed here in Jamaica in July, as one of the attorneys that have been working with them to file their asylum applications. So we're talking about challenges, Mr. Goff, but I was wondering if you could first for us state what some of the government's obligations would have been in a situation like this. Is it that they are obliged to allow time for persons to apply for asylum? Is it that you would have had to apply from you were in the country that you're trying to flee? What exactly is the process and the government's obligations in that process?
Okay, thank you. So the government's obligations, of course, stem from international law, right, as well as under the national framework and refugee policy that is in place in 2009, right? Now, the international framework outlined the responsibilities of member states like Jamaica to persons who are fleeing persecution and crisis situations as what exists in Haiti at present. And so the obligation of the government of Jamaica there is to then receive persons, and once there is indication that this is the circumstance of their entry to proceed to be with them as persons who may want to apply for asylum, So to have persons land here and then to say that nobody asked for asylum and then to return them forcibly, right, with that kind of swift action on the cover of dark, as happened recently, is not consistent with their obligations, Our view is that persons who are coming from Haiti, which we know is in an unprecedented situation, and of course, arriving here in the state and condition with which and how they arrived would necessitate, right, I think, an obvious response that seeks to deal with them pursuant to international obligation as a refugee.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Goff. Mr. Small, I know when the persons just arrived in July, you had some reservations around how those persons would have been treated in the general process. Could you share what some of those were, and did any of them come to fruition, or were we able to see a better attempt at assisting these persons?
Well, I'm not sure that it is accurate to say that I had reservations.
Okay.
Jamaica has a policy as to how to deal with refugees that was published, signed off by the current government in 2009. Mm-hmm. At that time, certainly the Prime Minister was a member of the cabinet, and that policy has been in existence from 2009 to today. And that policy sets out how persons who arrive in the country seeking asylum are to be treated. There was a concern that on the arrival of these persons, they were put before the court and charged, and that all the steps that the public was aware of and that the lawyers who took an interest in the matter were aware of indicated that the government was going to deport them. So I, along with other people, wrote to the Ministry of National Security, and that is how the activities of lawyers in support of the Haitians began. Since that time, they have been moved from Portland, where they were. Well, that's where they were charged, because they had already been housing them at a camp in St. Mary. And they have been at that camp for going up to now almost 3 months, July, August, September, and then early next month it will be 3 months. Mm-hmm. The processes that have taken place to start the interview, and in fact the interviews I think have been completed, of the Haitians has left a lot to be desired, and there have been several letters that have been written to the Ministry of National Security expressing the concerns. There has been some delay. Well, first of all, one of the problems that we encountered was that the quality of the translators was substandard and way below that which is set out in the international convention to which Jamaica is a part, mm-hmm. in that the expertise of these translators was way, way, way below what is required to give a clear indication to the refugees what do the questions being posed to them in English, and to state clearly what were the answers that the refugees gave in their Creole language to those questions. That has been a major problem. There has been a delay in setting up the eligibility committee, which is a committee of government officials that looks at the application of each of those persons based on those interviews that were undertaken with the help of the translators. And the delay, I think, is causing a lot of frustration. People have been confined under the custody of the police for almost 3 months.
Well, okay. Thank you so much for that context, Mr. Small. And, as you talk about what is essentially a 3-month detention as these persons are awaiting a decision that the committee to make the decision has not been constituted quite yet, there is, I'm sure, some concern around those conditions. I don't know if Miss Golota from Stand Up Jamaica...
No, the committee has been constituted. The committee has not begun deliberations.
Okay, understood. So the committee has been constituted but has not begun to deliberate on the information from those interviews as yet. So, Ms. Golota, I don't know if Stand Up has any concerns around the what is essentially the detention of these persons, how they're being held, or any other concerns around the process as it has unfolded so far.
Thank you, Jade. To use the word concern, it is very soft in a situation where, as has been explained until now and recognized by all the partners in this program, there are international rules and regulations and treaties which are ruling how to deal with migrants. Those rules have been heavily breached. I want to give an example about the last one, the last set which landed in Portland a few days ago. They were reaching on Saturday, and they were sent back around midnight. That means that none of their rights could have been addressed. The attorneys didn't even have the time to reach on the spot. Those people are being sent back. I was reading a statement from Minister Morgan, which was saying that there were some human trafficking person, etc., etc. It might be, but remember that there were children.
Yes.
Somebody says that there were 11, somebody says that there were 8. Question to everybody, is it possible that those children were also human trafficking people? No. I want to share with you and who is listening to this program that my office received a phone call the following day from a member of the rescue team. She didn't want to tell me her name because otherwise she might risk to lose her job. And she was telling that the rescue team went on spot, realized that they were quite sick, they were dehydrated, there was a pregnant woman, there were children in very bad shape, especially one which was full of sores and open boils. They wanted to call the doctor. They were saying that the doctor would have seen them the following day. So they came back on Sunday morning with breakfast and they didn't find those people which have been repatriated along the night. It is not disturbing, it's illegal. Those things should not happen because you sent back somebody which has done nothing wrong, because somebody which is a migrant is not a criminal, and you do it in the worst way without allowing them at least to receive health care, assistance, and assess if they were able to apply for asylum. They just left.
I'm just going to ask you to pause there, Carla, and I'm going to ask everyone to just stay for another 5 minutes. We're going to take another quick break, and then when we return, Carla, I'll allow you to finish, and then we'll take everyone's last remarks on this issue. So we'll take the break.
Hungry for deals? Get the famous bowl combo from KFC, available for just $590. KFC, it's finger-licking good. The time by KFC is
1:30.
Listen up, Jamaica. At Fosrich, everybody's getting a solar water heater. $20,000 deposit. 6 months to pay. What a deal! Fosrich Financing. Call us 876-937-5099.
This hurricane tip is brought to you by Guardian General Insurance Jamaica Limited. Live safe, live easy. Contact us at 876-926-3736 3720 or visit us at www.myggonline and get a free quote today. Are you ready for this hurricane season? Here are a few tips to remind you on how best to prepare for a storm. Store extra food of 4 to 5 days, especially things that can be eaten without cooking or that would need very little preparation. Remember, the electricity may be off during the hurricane, leaving you without refrigeration. This hurricane tip is brought to you by Guardian General Insurance Jamaica Limited. Live safe, live easy.
KFC, tastes so good with the price we love. For the famous ball KFC, we are go. So delicious, what a good deal this. I'm satisfied, I'm a bucket now famous. Best tasting food for your money. So delicious, everybody love it. With the chicken, corn, mashed potatoes, melted cheese and gravy.
Hungry for deals? Get the famous bowl combo from KFC. Creamy mashed potato, delicious chicken, melted cheese, corn, and gravy, plus a Pepsi for just $590. Also available in barbecue. KFC, it's finger licking good.
The ultimate station to listen on the island is Bridge 99 FM. And remember, you the Bush dad say, to the world, Bridge, ever live. Bush.
The people's champion. Our mission is love.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're discussing asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants, examining the human rights implications and state responsibility. I'm joined by Ms. Carla Galotto, Mr. Hugh Small, and Mr. Marcus Goff. Carla, before the break, you were giving us some of Stand-Up's perspective on these recent migrant issues. So I just ask you to finish your thought on that before I go back to Mr. Goff. Carla, are you still here?
What has been happening has been a breach of the most very basic rules in terms of humanity totally, but also in terms of international treaty. I don't think that Jamaica has done the right thing, and we strongly stand to require that they are going to be treated in the right way. There were two elements which were particularly disturbing. One, I was reading tons of comments under some articles, etc. Most of them were something like, send them back at the yard.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know how life in Haiti is? Do you think that those people are happy to live with no clothes, no shoes, leaving the house, leaving everything, reaching to a place just because of the climate of violence? I think we should all think that humanity needed to be preserved in any situation where people are dealing with abuses, desperation, and violence. It's too easy to say send them back at the yard. If it was a Jamaica, would we be thinking exactly the same? And the second thing is that knowing that Jamaica is part of a task force which has been created in CARICOM to assist a situation which is one of the most grave that have been happening in the Caribbean. Probably the most heavy one which we have been happening in our countries. And I think that Jamaica is doing well, promising help. And I learned in the morning that Jamaica will be also part of the task force sending security people trying to control the climate of violence and the gangs which are ruling the country. If Jamaica is doing like this, is welcome. But then when you have one real person in blood and flesh reaching your country, you should not forget what you promise in terms of assistance.
Yes, thank you for that, Carla. I had one final question for Mr. Goff. We've been talking a lot about international obligations, on treaties and policy, and I wondered if the general situation, that the fact that we all have this general knowledge on what the situation is like in Haiti, does that do anything to bolster the applications, or is this a case-by-case basis for each of the 37 persons?
Good question. Well, it is a case-by-case assessment of each person's application for asylum, But what we find disturbing is that each applicant is being asked to provide evidence of loss of family members' lives, evidence of the burning down of houses, of persons who can't be found and who are missing. And we're saying that these persons who fled their country in those circumstances should not be reasonably asked to provide this kind of evidence. And so what we are saying is that we can rely on the general information that we know is happening there, right, coupled with what the persons are saying, and not put them to a higher evidential standard to have to go and provide evidence of their loss. And so we think that certainly what is public knowledge and common knowledge should be taken into account by the committee.
Right, thank you so much, Mr. Goff. Any final word from you, Mr. Small?
I just like to qualify what Marcus just said. Each applicant has to show that based on her or his own experience, there is a legitimate case to consider her or him as a person who is deserving of being granted asylum. And so the particular experiences of individuals, and in this case we have a lot of experience of the individuals, has to be taken into account. So that most of these individuals are telling you of things that they saw and experienced, of the parents who were killed, of the burning of their homes, etc. And that is information that is relevant for considering whether they fall within the categories that is established by international law and Jamaica's policy.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mr. Small, and thank you to all of our guests for joining us. We appreciate the additional context that you've added to this issue. We hope that we can see some of these updates on this particular application, and we would look forward to sharing that with our listeners when it becomes available. So thank you again for joining us. We are now about to go into our second half of the program, and I believe Miss Jackson is back with us and ready to take over. Miss Jackson?
Ready to co-host.
I'm sorry, ready to co-host.
All right, thank you so much. Very good discussion, Jade, and of course we thank our guest. There were several issues that we hope to talk about, one of which we didn't have on our flyer, but it is food for thought for all of us. Now, we've heard the name Mario Dean as a country. And JFJ, we've worked with Amnesty International, and we published a report, Waiting in Vain. And when we had our peer support group,
yes,
we recalled as a small group when those who are affected by abuse by the security forces, extrajudicial killings, the families who are mourning their loved ones wait years before they see any justice. And they recalled, for example, standing in front of the Special Coroner's Court, letting their discontent be known. So it brings into focus, sharp focus, Mario Dean and what his mother, Mercia Fraser, would have had to be suffering. So just a quick recap. 2014, Mario Dean was taken into custody on the basis of having just a small portion of marijuana, what Jamaicans call a spliff. He was subsequently beaten while in the custody of the police. And upon going to the hospital, he was later pronounced dead. At the time, 2 inmates were found guilty. They were sentenced, I believe, to 5 years imprisonment. But having been in the custody of the state pre-trial detention, they would have time served. And I think they were released in 2019. They were about, one of the 3 individuals were found unfit to plea, or to plead rather.
Yes.
3 police officers were later charged. I don't remember the nature of the charges at the moment. But what is instructive is, since that matter was before the court, the 3 police officers, they're on bail now. Mercer Fraser, she has gone to court several times since 2014. And the matter has been put off over and over and over again. I think that matter since 2014 has seen at least 10 delays. One of which in 2019 thereabout was because the psychiatric report wasn't ready. Our legal manager went to court yesterday in Montego Bay with the family. The matter again was put off until next year because apparently there's a shortage of jurors in the country. I want that to sink in for listeners, Jade. Imagine having your child killed in the custody of the state. And Miss Fraser, I can't imagine what you're going through. But your energy, your resilience is needed to continue this fight, because someone must be held accountable for what your family has gone through and continues to go through. We heard from Minister of Justice, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, that a cabinet submission will be made to increase the stipend provided to jurors. Minister Chuck, JFJ is officially calling on you to see that through in quick and short order. This is not one of those statements we can let pass and is not readily actioned, because this conversation, it has been going on for far too long. I think something needs to be done by the state. I'm not sure if people are aware of their civic responsibilities in Jamaica.
I highly doubt it.
And then you hear about what list they're using to summon jurors. It's a whole heap of problems.
Yeah.
But the state must get it together. You can't have state inefficiency being the reason why justice is being denied to a family. It is unbecoming. And if you read these reports as far back as the 1990s, the issues remain. So, it's, I don't know, but I couldn't help but feel dejected and a negative feeling yesterday.
Yeah.
Reading the article, to know that, again, from 2014, and the family can't get the justice that they deserve. I think we're up on a break and then we touch on some other matters. But, today is really a somber day for us as a people. Anyway, we take the break.
Yo, dancehall can't stall when the money must shot the content.
Right. Introducing the Bridge 99 FM Dance Hall Chart Show.
I are the one and they are what?
All about our weekly top 10 music countdown, our Bridge Spotlight featuring artists and music producers, and our chat with the Bridge Jocks and music director.
We bring you in on the action. Just send your videos every week for your favorite artists on the chart in our Fan Affair segment. Do it WhatsApp 876-551-5782.
Jogger! It's new, it's authentic, it's trend-setting, and only on The Bridge. The Bridge 99 FM Dance Hall Chart Show, hosted by Shell.
You know the vibes. This Friday at 1 p.m. at the wickedest thing since dancehall. You know the thing go. We're bringing the vibes to the where, to the what, to the world.
Tune in to The Dark Enlightenment, the quintessential Rastafari radio program on The Bridge 99 FM. featuring the African Herbsman with holistic tips for your health. Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to midnight.
Hi, I'm Ronald Thwaites, and I'm the host of The Public Eye and The Open Mind on The Bridge 99 and Irie Jam in the tri-state area. This program will tell you the truth about life back a yard. Fair, open talk. No gossip, no slander. We want to listen to your concerns. Also want to help you with your problems in JA. We at The Bridge rate you and affirm our oneness as citizens of this blessed land we love. So join us now on Wednesdays on The Bridge, crossing the waters, linking Jamaicans and Jamaican lovers everywhere.
The ultimate station to listen on the island is Bridge 99 FM. And remember, Yakta the Bush dad say, to the world, Bridge, ever live. Bush.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We're in the last leg of our program. Last week we were in Parliament having what I considered, Jade, to be a good discussion.
I agree.
There were some moments of disagreement that needed clarity or clarification. But before I turn over to Jade to perhaps give a quick summary of our position on mandatory minimum, Clovis in the Jamaica Observer had a cartoon that depicted JFJ as somehow saying that all criminals should be released in society because we believe that mandatory minimum without any type of nuance is somehow too excessive. Complete misrepresentation of the organization's position, and another irresponsible cartoon from the newspaper. But we push ahead. So I hope for those who are watching, with Jade's explanation, can get a sense of what our position is. Because, if we don't consider all the variables, when you look at how laws can impact the criminal justice system, that thrust for lock them away forever is there. But there are times when we have to be looking at what the implications are when laws are being passed, and how in trying to fix one issue, we may create mayhem in other ways. You remember we started the second half of the program by mentioning Mario Dean and the delay in the matter. I want us to consider what those implications may be when you have excessive sentences. A natural inclination would be for those who are so convicted to try and challenge it at the Court of Appeal, and for those who can afford it, go all the way up to Privy Council. What the implications may be for the court choking itself in backlogs and so on. But Jade, over to you too.
Yes, so, just to quickly summarize some of the major things that we would have discussed, and I encourage you all to watch our presentation. But we focused on, firstly, we made clear JFJ is not against mandatory minimums. I think we've said that many, many times. What we are concerned with is the use of excessive mandatory minimums that offer no avenue for judicial discretion. That is the concern. Because essentially what you would have is the Parliament mandating a sentence for a type of offence, regardless of the circumstances of that offender, regardless of the circumstances of even which the offence took place. And so our concern is the effect that would have on our justice system generally. As Mikhail would have said in her discussion just now, these longer sentences are very likely to be subject to appeal. We've even seen recently in Tafari Morrison's case, where his sentence was only 15 years. And he still brought the matter all the way to the Privy Council. And mindful that the Privy Council did not find his specific sentence to be manifestly excessive, we cannot say that would be the case for all of these other matters. So there is a likelihood to see that increased number of appeals. And we look at that with the backdrop of, I think, 2 or 3 appeals. I know one of them, or board director John Clark.
Are you talking the Ray Morgan matter? And another one came up in the newspaper, Sunday paper
this Sunday.
16 years of hell, I believe the headline was.
Yes. So we're looking at those kinds of delays in terms of seeking appeals. So already, this is without these mandatory minimums in place. So of course, there are those issues. Then we have to look at the landscape that we're in. One of our proposals, for example, was not to have this mandatory minimum applied to children, which the government's current proposal is to have a 20-year minimum applied to children in these circumstances. And this proposal does not include any caveats for judicial discretion. A judge cannot look at the fact that this child may have been influenced by an adult.
And if you listen to Black Man trial,
absolutely.
Outside of the quoting of the scriptures, he was there saying that the judge should have freed his counterpart.
I heard. And if you can have someone who is a convicted leader of a major organized criminal entity saying, do not convict.
Because I was the one who
I influenced
them to act.
Can't imagine what that influence would be on a child in a community being terrorized.
And whether or not the veracity of what he's saying is factual or truthful, the point is that is a real possibility for some of our children. And again, so it's a myriad of issues, certainly.
Certainly. So, our concern is really around the implications of what these sentences could be. And we're a lot less focused on the criminals and are much more so focused on those persons who will need to access justice and would be unable to do so because of these sentences. So I think engage with our presentation. Our Instagram pages are always open to answer questions on anything that we would have presented on. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions on the proposals that we made in Parliament.
Yeah. Another thing happened over the weekend. There's a joint select committee reviewing the job description of parliamentarians, and I wasn't able to go physically, but I was watching online. I know Jeanette Calder from Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal went, and the purpose of it is really to say these are the areas within which we're holding our members of parliament accountable. Let us codify something in law that says these are the minimum standards by which these MPs should be operating. There are several things that jumped out at me. I listened to Robert Miller, for example. His constituencies in St. Catherine, thereabout. I don't remember the name of the constituency, but it's in St. Catherine. And he said that he's getting calls 2, 3 a.m. in the morning asking him to purchase things and respond to all type of issues. So, and let me say to citizens, I am urging you to go to these sessions because citizen accountability is critical. It is one of our fundamental human rights in terms of our civil and political rights to be able to vote in a free and fair election. But with that comes the what next? How do you hold those who govern accountable? And you may ask the question, why are we mentioning this at JFJ? We're mentioning it because, tell you what, when you put people in power and your fundamental rights across civil, political, social, and economic rights, we have to hold people accountable to ensure that those rights are fulfilled. So this is a part of our thrust for civic participation and engagement, because when I looked at the auditorium, that room, it was a little bit empty for comfort.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, we need to put systems in place, but I encourage people. The last thing, Jade, that we want to touch on is the developing matters surrounding the Integrity Commission last week. Now, on Thursday of last week, there was the emerging report that a director at the Integrity Commission was shot. We had no further information at the time to the extent of the injury and who was the victim in that attack. For a few hours on Thursday, we were crippled with fear whether or not that director was harmed as a result of their lawful duty. A few hours after, the Jamaica Constabulary Force indicated that the director, who was since revealed to be Ryan Evans, the Director of Corruption Prevention, was shot during the course of a robbery. The media ran into the executive director at the Integrity Commission, Mr. Greg Christian, asked a question about his feedback on the shooting. His reaction, I believe it was. And he said, ask the government. Now, I will take a term from the Jamaica Gleaner that terminology was pregnant with innuendos, and JFJ, we issued our strong disapproval of that comment because in its inflammatory nature, it led others and certainly inferences to be drawn whether the government should be held accountable. Now, given the office that Mr. Christie holds, it was highly irresponsible for such a comment to be made. Our partner agencies, Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, the National Integrity Action, and others have since called for the resignation of Mr. Christie. JFJ has not. And we opted not to call for the resignation for several reasons. The first of which is context. Now, while we disapprove of that inflammatory comment, one must remember that the Integrity Commission and its officers have been subjected to vile commentary on social media, veiled threats on social media, and statements uttered in Parliament that question the political antecedent of the very officer who was shot, but also question the integrity of the officers at the Integrity Commission. So that context is important to understand that Mr. Greg Christie, in a moment of shock and stress, said something he ought not to have said. JFJ called for an apology, and what the Integrity Commission deemed as an apology is wanting, and much more is needed. But within the context I outlined earlier, we opted not to call for the resignation. What JFJ has since called for is for the commissioners who have ultimate responsibility, the 5 commissioners led by Justice Seymour Panton, to assess the impact of Mr. Christie's comments, whether or not those comments perhaps would have undermined the public confidence in the Integrity Commission, and certainly the implications of that comment in the Integrity Commission and its work being distracted by those comments. So that is what we're calling for. And I want to impress upon the parliamentarians to be careful how they speak going forward. That is JFJ's position on the matter. Time is upon us, so let us quickly just go through who won.
Yes, so our trivia winner was Kamala B. The question was, when was the refugee policy finalized? And the answer was 2009. So congratulations again, Kamala. You will receive your prize via Instagram. This was Let's Talk Justice. We'll be back next week with a special guest host. It won't be me. So we'll be back next week. I am Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
And I'm Mikkel Jackson. Thank you so much forever being with us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Justice, the people's champion. Justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica the known. Right to life, right to liberty. How come anywhere one in a Jamaica? Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
The ultimate station to listen on the island is Bridge 99 FM. And remember, Yakta the Bush dad say, to the world, Bridge, ever live. Bush.